I'm Erica Forti. I'm the superintendent of East Haven Public Schools. We're a small district located right on the shoreline in Connecticut, right on the fringe of New Haven. So we're sort of an urban fringe district. We've got about 25% of our population of Hispanic descent, and we have just over 9% second language learners. We are a community eligible district, so all of our students receive free breakfast and free lunch every single day. We are an alliance district, which is one of the 30 districts that the state has prioritized. So we get additional funding to support academic, social, emotional learning, and capital improvement projects, in addition to our regular operating budget and other grant funds. We're small. We have just over 3,000 students in district, but we have 8 schools, including an early learning center housed with just over 150 3 and 4-year-olds. We've got a lot of different school configurations. We've got one high school, 9-12. We've got one middle school, 6-8. We have an intra-district magnet school, grades 1 through 8. We have a K2 school, a 3-5 school, and 2 K5 schools. So a little unique in our breakdown there.
What's the current flow of, is all campus kind of hybrid? What's the setup for the district?
So back when we were evaluating our reopening model, the health data indicated that there was like really no better time to open full in person than August and September. So we opened full in person for all of our students back in September. We did offer a little remote option for parents and families who, for whatever reason that we totally respect and value, weren't comfortable or couldn't send their children to school. And so we designed a remote model, a learning model for them that has since more morphed into a live streaming model into our regular in-person classroom settings. And we're still full in person. I've been really committed to keeping our schools open for kids. I think kids need to be in school. They need to feel connected. They need to be supported. They need to reestablish those relationships with the adults. We hadn't seen them since last March, and we missed them, and we wanted them back in our buildings. So we were able to do that, and we were able to maintain keeping them in schools. We're working with our local health department really to continually monitor that as the community spread increases, just to make sure that our buildings are safe for kids. They are feeling safe. Just did a parent feedback survey that was really fantastic. We got some really great insight. We'll use that to continue to do what we're doing well and make some adjustments. But it was really important for us to get our kids back into school, and 75% of our kids are attending. We have about 25% remote learners. The live stream model works out really great because, as you know, with quarantining and students having to move in and out for different reasons, having access to the regular teacher and access to that classroom instruction where all their peers are is pretty seamless. So if you have to quarantine for 2 weeks, you're with your teacher live streaming together in a virtual setting, or you're live streaming into your classroom where your teacher's teaching in front of their in-person learners. So we're going to hold on as long as we can.
How does, I guess, the logistical part work for maybe other people who would want to consider live stream?
So, and I know that you've talked about so many of these different elements, and it's incredibly overwhelming, right? It's overwhelming for leadership. It's overwhelming for teachers, right? We're trying to do 2 different learning models and make sure that all of our kids have access to education in an equitable manner. So our idea was we needed a device that everybody was pretty familiar with. And so, everybody has a phone. So we chose iPads, and we got a stand, and we got, some microphones, and we said, we've got to keep the technology simple. We don't want to invest a lot of time in like these tracking cameras, and we have Zoom, and we have Google Meet, And so we're using those platforms. Some teachers, they have their preferences, and we want them to have the autonomy to choose which platform. So
Cool.
we have an iPad on a stand in the front of the classroom with the teacher, and those are our at-home friends, and we have our in-school friends, and the teacher's engaging with both. We do have some support staff in classrooms, so at some point the teacher might be the in-person learners, and a special ed teacher or an ELL teacher might be working with the at-home learners, and then they switch. Our parent feedback data, though, gave us some great insight about the concerns parents had around these different learning models. And one of them for our at-home learners was, connecting with their peers and and those social interactions with their peers. So we're looking to find ways where we can increase that and bridge that. So we might be looking at additional after-school sessions where we can get kids in settings, just talking casually, having some social interactions that they're kind of missing, those opportunities when they're passing in the hall or at lunch or in a study hall and things of that nature. So, we start, but we're never finished. We're constantly maneuvering and moving around to make sure that we're doing the best we can and being responsive to the input we're getting from parents. And soon, hopefully, our student survey that we're handing out this week.
If we go back to 2021, let's say everyone in person, this idea of, well, if Johnny's sick for a week, or if Johnny has, surgery, and he's like, well, what if you remember last year we got the live stream for 2 weeks. Can I have him live stream rather than miss all the classes? So what do you see can stick in the upcoming year of 2021, 2022?
That's a great question. And I've had many conversations with my leadership team, like, listen, this is really challenging and really hard, and we're stretching ourselves in so many ways. But when this is all over, if it ever is, we cannot go back to doing business as usual. No way, because there are things here that are working that we can take advantage of, right? We have athletes who may have a knee injury, who have to have ACL surgery, and they're out, they think, for a week, and then there's some complications, and then they're out for a month, right? So how do we capitalize on some of these experiences? And instead of, after 2 weeks going by, we follow up, what's going on? We miss so-and-so, where are they? We've had some complications. We're going to be out another couple of weeks. All right, so we're going to send a tutor to the home. Why can't we have the child live stream into the classroom and access that instruction and make it more seamless and coherent, right? So those conversations are absolutely happening. I think what we have to be mindful of is that, you have to design the program in anticipation for all of those unique circumstances, whether we have students who are struggling every day with anxieties and struggle to come to school, or feeling uneasy, students who may be ill or sick, students who sometimes are faced with family hardships that require them to be home for unforeseen circumstances. How do we design it so that we're maximizing our staff, but also not stretching them so thin that we're losing the impact that both of these models can have? And I think that's where the challenge comes in a little bit, because right now, we're live streaming every single classroom. So, looking at it very coherently and succinctly to say, we could potentially have a dozen kids across a dozen K-5 classrooms who need to access some live streaming for various reasons. How do you structure that so that, you're not having to live stream every class every day? Because it could get really taxing on teachers.
Yeah.
And, we've done the best that we can to support them and provide them with some of those professional learning opportunities and growth. But we're learning alongside them as well.
Yeah.
So, there's also some things that we really need to think very deeply, systematically, and critically about moving forward. But there is a lot of opportunity here, a lot. It's kind of exciting. Whole idea about cohorting, right? And talking about keeping kids in groups and cohorting. So that at the high school is a little bit more challenging, not so challenging at the elementary level. We were faced with the middle school level. And so we redesigned some of our teaming structures at the middle school level and did some more cohorting. And what we're finding is that maybe at that developmental level, cohorting kids in teams and keeping them closer connected to one particular group of peers with opportunities to cross over in some elective areas and other areas and experiences throughout the day, really allows them to develop deeper relationships with staff and each other. And oddly, we're seeing a decrease in some of our behavior referrals and things of that nature. And we're wondering if that's not a result of stronger relationships with teachers and kids staying connected to the same sort of groups of kids throughout the day, developing deeper relationships with them instead of going to 7 different classes with 7 different mixes of kids.
Yeah.
So we're looking at these developmental levels, the social emotional needs of kids, and some of these operational structures we have, and trying to figure out, are we onto something here? And if we are, what information and data do we need to prove that? And then how do we replicate that at a higher level?
When everyone was virtual, having, we'll take the kids and we'll pod these 5 kids, 6 kids together so they can kind of have that social interaction. And then there was also a charter school in New York that I interviewed, and they did something that was interesting where they said it was called distance teaching. So the teachers got to be home, but the kids still came to school, but then they kind of watched their teacher on smart boards and things like that. Is it safe to kind of compare cohorting to podding? Because I know that's a big word right now too, like learning pods, or is there a difference there?
I mean, I can see some similarities there, but where it would stay together because we were trying for contact tracing purposes, keeping kids together. And the teachers then would move into the classrooms, and there would be teams of teachers that would work with certain cohorts of kids.
Got it.
And those cohorts.
So then the cohort would stay in the classroom, and then.
Yeah, right. And so and I know that there's also some concerns there relative to kids not getting up and moving and going into different classrooms. But also we're seeing a benefit in terms of kids developing deeper relationships with each other and having time to talk and at deeper levels as opposed to just this passing and, oh yeah, this person's in this class of mine. And sometimes I think at that level, those relationships and connections, not only between the kids and their peers, but between the adults is really important. Kids feel connected and engaged, they're more likely to come to school and be present and ready for learning. And so we've done a lot of work around chronic absence. And I think I want to say back in 2016, 17, our district was upwards near 18%, chronic absence. We're down to 14% as of last year. So we've worked really hard on trying to make connections with kids, engage them, get them excited about coming to school, and also work with families and partner and engage families in a different way to improve our chronic absence rate, because if our kids aren't in school, we can't educate them. And I think opportunity to engage even further that will further help us reach the kids that we still need to reach.
How has having to go virtual impact the chronic absences, and what strategies have you had to implement or you've seen work to keep your numbers where you saw them before pandemic?
When we were full virtual in the spring, it wasn't like the model we have now. We learned a lot back then, right? So we were doing and taking attendance differently back then. But I think one of the things is that, this year's the pandemic really requires us to rethink what really constitutes attendance and how we define it. So like, what's our attendance campaign look like? And how do we monitor absenteeism? And how are we using the data? And what do the recording codes look like? We've had to completely shift all of that thinking mindset and those operational principles, for lack of a better word. And so what I think is really imperative is that when kids are transitioning from in-person to virtual, is that we make it as seamless as possible. So I just had to quarantine a couple classes due to a positive case. And so we had practice with kids. What happens when you go home? If you're a second grader, what happens when you go home? Get your Chromebook, you remember the link, you know where to go, you know how to log in. I'm going to see you that tomorrow morning. We're all going to be live together. in our classroom, and we're going to do our reading and our writing and our math for the next 2 weeks together. But we're practicing together while we're in person, and we're going to hook up with our at-home friends in this virtual setting for the next 2 weeks. And then in 2 weeks, we'll come back together. And so getting ready for those transitions helps to retain the kids so that when we transition to a virtual setting for quarantine purposes or whatever it is, they're less likely to not engage. They're more likely to engage. Keeping the lines of communication open with parents, letting them know what's going on, helping them access the links. We were fortunate to be one-to-one in grades 3 through 12 when we shut down in March. And so we quickly expanded that to pre-K 12 and have since updated some of those models for this fall. So technology and Wi-Fi hotspots and all of those barriers that are controllable that we can assist with, we've done that. Now it's about the work for us in making those transitions seamless so kids stay engaged. I usually every week get a list of families and kids who may not be engaging, and I make phone calls. I come from a really positive, supportive place. It's not punitive because I need insight as to what's going on. I need to know, what are you struggling with? What can we help you with? Because that gives us information to shift as adults, as teams, as administrators, as teachers, to meet our families and our students' needs better. We take a very personal touch approach. I was talking with my family and community engagement coordinator just yesterday, and she said, do you know the family that we were working with, and they don't have transportation, so we've been delivering food. I went to their house, I delivered some Chromebooks, I helped them log on. 2 of the kids weren't engaged. Today they showed up for learning, right? So drive-bys, hey, where are you? We miss you. Can you log on tomorrow? Personal invites, hey, you wanna have a virtual lunch with me? I'm sending you a postcard invite. Join my personal lunch, come on, let's link up, let's connect, what's going on? Don't worry about, the math, the reading, the writing. Let's just reconnect, get them engaged, get them signed on, and then we can put the supports in to move them forward socially, emotionally, and academically. It's a tough time. People are juggling a lot at home in their personal lives and emotionally. So, it's whatever we can do. We roll up our sleeves and we get it done.
What's kind of the expectation, accountability you guys receiving from the state and the DOE?
Our State Department has been fantastic. I have to say, the amount of resources and supports and webinars and layers for, leadership, for teachers, for parents, for students has been tremendous. And they recently came out with an addendum. I can't remember exactly what number. It might have been 14. I think it was addendum number 14, where they give some guidance on school attendance. And they say that, a remote student can be considered in attendance on a particular day if the total time spent on these following things equals at least half the school day. So synchronous virtual classes, or synchronous virtual meetings, or time logged in on electronic systems or platforms, or the time in completing assignments and submission of those assignments. If a combination of all of those things equals at least half the school day, then they can be considered present. Some really hard and courageous conversations were had around this. It's a hot topic, attendance and grading, right? There's a lot of people who sit on a lot of different sides of the fence. Some people think you have to be present every single second of my face-to-face instruction in order to be present and hand in every single assignment. And the state is giving us some guidance like, listen, we have to be a little flexible here. It can be a combination of these things as you're monitoring and assessing a child's participation and growth. I think our belief is that attendance in school really, whether it's in person or it's remote, it's just imperative for all our students' social and emotional well-being. And the priority is really ensuring that students are safe and present and engaged in their learning. And we have to be sensitive to their needs and their family circumstances during this time and support them in overcoming some of those barriers.
With being able to have so much flexibility, how does a school track that? I guess if Johnny was on two 2-hour sessions here, did his homework over here that was estimated to take 30 minutes. He was in like this community thing with his art teacher over here earlier. How does that work?
We've shifted a couple times and we've elicited the support of the state, but we're trying to create codes, attendance codes, right? Because we want to know when our remote learners are present. So we have a remote present and a remote absence code. But we also want to know when our students who are in-person learners are home and they may not be feeling well and they're taking that extra precaution and staying home, but they're feeling well enough to access live instruction. We're not marking them remote present, but we're marking them live stream present, which indicates they engage that day, they're an in-person learner, and they access live streaming. So we've been trying to work with these codes so that, one, we can run reports and get accurate data so we know who's engaging and not engaging, and we can follow up accordingly. And two, we're actively and accurately reflecting when kids are engaged and they're not engaged. Sometimes teachers between their live streaming sessions and their remote learners and in-person learners in combination with their work are marking attendance the following day as they get a sense of who's submitting work and things of that nature. It's hard. And I'm sensitive to, the challenges that brings for teachers and managing all of that, especially at the upper grade levels when you have 100 kids on your caseload. Yeah, so it hasn't been easy. We're still working through it and making some changes, but we've been collaborating with the state, other districts, and our technology team, our attendance teams to make sure that we're looking at codes, tracking, we've had to shift and radically redesign how we look at attendance, define attendance, track it, analyze it, and respond to it.
I'm a big fan of live stream attendance. I think that makes a lot of sense, especially as families now who are taking their kids on the road during coronavirus because they're tired of being shut down and they want to go to a national park for 2 weeks, but still want to be connected to school. I think there's a lot of power here for that choice for families to still be connected to their school anywhere, anytime. I think that's exciting.
I do too. I totally agree with you. I think there's some challenges there, but I think those challenges lead to so many different opportunities, and that's really exciting.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to continue to work on this, and I will definitely kind of send you the video and get your guys' feedback on it and kind of go from there.
I'm super impressed with your work and your energy. It's really cool stuff. So thank you very much. This is an honor for me.
If you know a teacher, educator, leader who is doing cool things in the live streaming space, please reach out. In the meantime, keep changing the world.